Welcome to Unsilent with your hosts Dave and Brian. This is not another current events podcast. We're digging deeper, diagnosing, and discussing what's really going on today, how we got here, and providing observations for future generations.
Welcome to Unsilent. We're Brian and Dave, and we'd love to hear where you think we got it right and where we completely missed the point. You can do that by visiting unsilentpodcast.com or go to Rumble or our other social media channels where there's a good comments section. So, Brian, what do you think is interesting in the world today?
Well, I was up in the People's Republic of Washington this weekend, just a few hours east of where you're at. And ordinarily, with the advent of DVR, I don't typically watch live TV, so I don't ever watch commercials anymore. And I don't watch a lot of TV to begin with, but the TV I do watch, I just fast forward through the commercials. But while I was up there staying at a hotel, I did not have that option, so I had to endure the 3-minute segments of commercials. And it's election season, and so I don't know, half or better of the commercials I watched were candidates running for office. And I noticed the most peculiar thing, and I don't know if you've noticed this or not, or maybe this is a thing all the time. I don't know. The Republicans running very proudly say they're Republican.
Right.
The Democrats running did not mention party affiliation in one single advertisement I saw on TV. I thought that was wild.
Well, the sort of blame shifting, if you will, or the stealth manner of some of these things I've noticed in these commercials as well, because I don't watch a lot of live TV either, but my dad, who's 96, he doesn't have a lot to do. So, like at night, he's watching TV, and I see these election commercials as well. And one of the things sort of similar to what you're talking about that stood out to me is we've got these, without getting too far in the details, we've got these 4 initiatives that are on the ballot statewide in Washington state right now about a variety of things that will save taxpayers money. We can still continue to, use gas stoves and, not have a big tax on our gasoline and all this. And all of these initiatives, everything that's being said about them. And I don't know every single last little detail about these initiatives, but everything that's being said about them, I do know is a lie. So, and I'll give you, not to put too fine a point on it, but let me give you an example. The biggest things that are being said about these initiatives on these commercials that I'm watching are rich hedge fund manager from California is working to pass initiatives to save his rich buddy's money. And they show these 2 guys drinking champagne on an airplane and all this. And now to be, compliant with campaign election law, they have to put the disclaimer on the bottom, and they have to put the top 3 donors for who run this ad. And so the one that's complaining about the rich hedge fund manager sponsoring these initiatives, the primary sponsors are SEIU and Steve and Connie Ballmer. Now, Steve Ballmer happens to be like one of the top 5 richest people on earth. Another one of them that talks about that is for lowering the extra carbon tax on our gasoline here, which disproportionately slams poor people. I mean, it just slams poor people. I can afford to pay, 50 cents more a gallon, because I'm not poor, but, people that I know that, have, $20 an hour, $25 an hour jobs, it's really tough. But the top sponsors of the initiative or of the attack ads on those initiatives are Bill Gates, Steve Ballmer. I mean, but the positioning of them, and I notice these things because one, I'm a sentient human being and it's right there at the bottom of the screen. And 2, I'm a marketing guy. So I like to see how this stuff goes, but they are so blatantly dishonest. It's kind of like the ones you're talking about people that are running for office, who are Democrats, who are running away from the name. They're running away from Biden. They're running away from Harris. And it apparently, they don't want to be associated with who they really are, just like in these initiatives.
Right. Yeah, it's funny, but so I'm in the Phoenix area, and I see this a little bit here. Like, there's every major intersection has, half a dozen giant
Right.
size, not yard signs. They're much bigger. They're 3 feet by 4 feet signs, or 4
Right.
feet by 5 feet signs, or whatever they are. Um, and I noticed, about half of them, the ones that are Democrats, have the the donkey, or the a D, or something,
Right.
proud Democrat, or something, whatever it is, right? And about half of them don't. But in Washington, I was just surprised. I didn't see a single one where they mentioned their party affiliation. And so the obvious question that comes up to me for me is, why are you running? Like, why is that not the headline, or at least the subtitle? I mean, why
Yeah.
why what why are we not proud of this? Like, it seems to me like the whole point of a politician is you're you think you have good ideas, presumably, or
Right.
you wouldn't be running,
Yeah.
and you're proud of those ideas. You think they're the best thing for all the people and all the constituents, and you want to go out and promote those things. Well,
Right.
for all those things to happen, it seems like you would lean into the party affiliation instead of shy away from it. And one of the things I think is important for Kenny G to understand, from my perspective, is nowadays, in this moment in time in 2024, people who are more conservative are just kind of flat out calling the progressive movement communism. If they got
Sure.
everything
Sure.
they wanted, it's more or less just communism, right?
Yeah.
Um, the people who are progressive are saying, no, 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 we don't want. We just want people to pay their fair share, and
Right.
give a helping hand, and equity, and all these euphemisms for wealth redistribution, right?
Right. Yep.
Which is basic, communism, like the
Sure.
top, 50 or 20, whatever 100,000 people get to dictate how much money everybody is entitled to.
Right.
uh and so they don't really defend that. They just use these clever euphemisms for things, but at the same time, they're not proud of the party they're supposed to be representing. I find that to be dishonest, or disingenuous, or dis something.
Well,
It just feels, from my perspective, it feels dishonest, right? But the
yes.
people who are supporting those folks don't see as dishonesty. How do you think, to the best of your ability, you're a wise guy, and I mean, you're a smart guy, and you engage with these folks who have different ideology than you do, and things like that? What's your best guess of their awareness that this is a thing, that, and maybe I just caught the 12 commercials that this happened with, and they're the only 12 for all I know. I have no idea, but it seems unlikely that's the case. It seems
Yeah.
like it's probably the 12 I saw would be a good representation of all of them. So
Sure.
what's your belief of their awareness that this is a thing? And then second question, follow-up question would be, what do you think is their defense of it, or explanation of it?
Yeah. And I think I think the both answers are related. I think the most, I think there's an awareness of it. And I mean, I've actually had this discussion with some folks on that side of the political spectrum. And the discussion is, well, yeah, politicians lie. They'll do what they need to do to, get elected to office. But, they're sure better than these other people that want to, take away your right to health care, and who want to, push grandma off the cliff, and who want to, take all your money and give it to Warren Buffett, and so,
Yeah,
so it's a downplaying of the significance of the fact that these people that are running for office are blatant liars. And it's a minimization of that issue. They realize it's the yeah, but, right? Yeah, but, and then it's an upplaying of all the perceived, negatives about their opponents. And
yeah,
I think there's a lot of reflex in that as well. In other words, I vote Democrat, so therefore I'm reflexively going to vote Democrat because it's what I've always done. Because the other side, according to the major news sources, is essentially attempting to end democracy as we know it and enslave us, and all of this. So I think that's
yeah,
kind of that's kind of where that's at. And I think there's the other part of this is that you find, like in the Midwestern states, in a number of the Midwestern states, there are people that are running as Democrats, but who are saying that they've stood up to Joe Biden. So like, um, there, which is it? I can't remember which state it was. The big fracking state. I think it might be Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania,
Um,
yeah.
and one of the guys running for Congress there says, yes, something effective. Yes, I'm a Democrat and I stood up to Joe Biden. I won't, give in because country first and party second and all of this. And it's just it's ultimately a very short term mentality because it's like, they're making a calculus of what I have to say to win, because they know that whole track of the Democratic Party is very unpalatable to most people in their state. So they say
Well,
whatever
it
they
sounds
take.
like what you're describing is traditional tribalism. Diminish or dismiss
Yeah.
what my folks are doing and exaggerate and use hyperbole to explain what the other people are
Yeah,
doing.
exactly. It's gaslighting. It's tribalism at the very most, the most crude and disgust. Well, and when you get to the top of the ticket, with Harris in particular, at least we're past. I was raised in a middle class family. At least we're a little bit past that now. But but all of the answers are gaslighting and non answers, and it's
Yeah.
you would 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you might have had a little bit of that, but you wouldn't have had this level that we see right now. That and then what is it? President Biden just said something effective. Yeah, we should lock Trump up. So
Yeah.
it's like you've got these extremes. So they're all examples of the extremes. Don't tell me what I need to explain about what I clearly believe. So don't tell me that because I'm for a new American century. So don't tell me that. And by the way, the other guy's Hitler and needs to be locked up.
Yeah. One of the things you mentioned Kamala Harris and whether or not if she wins, it'll be easy for Kenny G to go back in time and look at video clips because they'll
Right.
be, she'll be a president. Like
Yep.
there'll be a library named after her at some point or
Right.
whatever. If she doesn't win though, it'll go the route of who did Reagan beat in '84?
So
The guy from
Mondale. Is
Minnesota.
that
Was it
Mondale?
Mondale? Yeah, Mondale.
It
Okay.
was Mondale.
Like nobody knows what he said,
Right.
in 2024, nobody can remember what he said 40 years ago. So,
Right.
60 years ago when Kenny G's listening to this, if he ever does, nobody will never know what Kamala Harris says.
Right.
Um, but
Well, nobody knows
I
now
have
either.
I have a theory on her interview question answer style. And my theory is that the calculus that they make on answers is not about the quality of the content, it's the length of time that you speak after a question is asked.
Sure.
She fills space with phrases like in terms of and as it relates to
Yeah.
and these kind of time filler things. She doesn't
Right.
really say anything of substance, but she answers a question for 90 seconds and then they're on to the next thing.
Right.
And for most people, it takes 60 to 90 seconds to get a complete thought out.
Right.
For her, she's just looking to fill the 90 seconds, and the completeness of the thought is secondary. That's kind of my new theory or hypothesis for her answering style when she's posed a question.
I think that's probably true. I think the only criteria for her to answer the question is that it is some reasonable way to connect words in English that's not grammatically wrong.
Yeah,
So, the level of for the most part, you can't say there's any content there. I don't know that we've really heard much of any. Every now and then, she lets something that she believes actually slip.
yeah,
Not very often, because I'm not actually sure she really believes much. But it's just a really, as a person who values words, it's really painful to listen to. And
yeah,
not that listening to Trump is like listening to, Wordsworth or, or some great poet either.
yeah,
But at least on that side, without getting, I suppose I'm getting political, at least on that side, the dude believes pretty much what he says, or,
yeah,
even if it's ridiculous and stupid,
yeah.
you know,
I heard a guy, and I wish if I knew his name, I would give him credit for saying this. This is not my idea, but when I heard it, I was like, that guy's 100% right. He explained and he had two words he used to encapsulate, and I've forgotten those as well. But basically, he basically was saying Trump is the guy who takes 90 seconds to tell you something he could tell you in 20 seconds, Like
Sure.
he
Yeah.
just goes on and on and on. You're like, okay, I got it. Let's go to the next
Right.
thing. Wrap it up here. I got it. But you know clearly what he thinks. He
Right.
just wants to expand on it for an extra, 87% longer than he should.
It's-
And Harris is the opposite, where you're waiting for it to get to the point. You're waiting for it to get to the point, but she never gets there.
yeah. Exactly. That's a good observation. Well,
Yeah.
you've probably heard Ben Shapiro say that he thinks that the epitaph that they're going to put on Trump's grave eventually was President Donald Trump. He said stuff. It's kind of the way it
Yeah.
was. He
I,
says a lot of stuff.
I do think, kind of shifting gears here a little bit, and then we'll get to your point about how do you decide who to vote for.
Sure.
But I do think that, well, again, I think Trump would be fun to have dinner with one time. I don't think that him and I would be compatible. Like, where maybe I'm wrong. I mean, what do I know? All I know is what I see on TV.
Yeah.
My personality would get tired of those long-winded,
Right.
grandiose, self-congratulatory things. I just, after a while, I would get tired of that. But I think it'd be fun for a dinner for sure.
Yes.
So regardless of whether he was running for president, regardless if he was a billionaire, regardless if he
Right.
was ever on TV, like, forget all that stuff. He's got some success in business. I think he's probably
Sure.
got some
Absolutely.
fantastic stories. I think I'd enjoy dinner with the guy.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I don't know. Um, but what he has been able to do as far as getting the Tulsi Gabbards and RFK Juniors and Vivek Ramaswamy's and
Yep.
this Elon Musk, this cohort of very capable people on board,
Yeah.
and also resonating with regular folks. Like as we're recording this, just 4 or 5 days ago, he did his thing where they went to McDonald's and he worked.
Yeah.
He quote unquote worked at McDonald's for a shift or a couple hours
Right.
or whatever. Now the McDonald's was closed, I think, and they,
Of
of course,
course.
it was, because it's
Yeah.
Secret Service is going to let random people drive up, and the
Right.
news media, of course, is like, oh, this was all staged. Well, so was the Kamala Harris getting Doritos at the 7-Eleven or whatever. Like, it's all
Right.
this stuff is all staged. It has to be, because
Of
they have
course.
security risk. But his personality, just left on his own, just to be him, is not off-putting. Now, occasionally he says really, really dumb things and really
Yeah.
offensive things. And by the way, so do I. Like, that part doesn't bother me. I'm
Right.
not saying that everyone should have that perspective. I'm just
Right.
saying, for me personally, that's stuff, like, I say dumb things, I say off-putting things, and like I, but overwhelmingly, he says things that are endearing, and
Good.
he tells, like, the one couple pulled up and they had an accent from somewhere, I don't know where, and they said something like, "You allowed regular people like us in." And he's like, "You're not regular people. I can tell from again, he's a politician and he's
Yeah.
a salesman and he's
It's a
these things,
salesman.
but he's complimentary of these folks he's never met before and whatever."
Yeah.
And the party of joy, or the campaign of joy, that we've been told to expect from the Harris campaign, has turned into lectures from the likes of Barack Obama and the people in the people in the View, and
Uh,
the late night hosts, and it's a very condescending,
yes.
"you
Yeah.
should or else" kind of a thing.
Right.
And if nothing else, when I look at Trump, I'm like, he has, and I can't put it into words, because I'm not a sociologist or behavior specialist or whatever, but he has an approach that is inviting to people, and he speaks to things that they care about,
Sure.
versus these other issues that are, like you're describing in the ads you saw, of, like, the billionaires toasting champagne in the airplane. But
Yeah.
I think people are really, they're kind of settling on, those ads are bullshit, and Trump
Yeah.
says dumb things that are out of whack and out of line
Yeah.
sometimes, but he's speaking about things that you really care about. And
Yeah.
what's your, how would you explain that to Kenny G, like that whole phenomenon there?
Well, so Trump has the everyman phenomenon. Yes, he's a TV star. Yes, he's probably a billionaire or millionaire, rich, super rich guy. Yes,
Yeah,
he's been the
he's a
president.
blowhard.
There's no doubt he's a blowhard. But he has that everyman quality to him. So I'm going to relate this to something a friend of mine said to me one time. I remember a long time ago, I went to a conference and this friend of mine came with me, who was a kind of an everyman kind of guy, blue collar worker and stuff. And there's a guy up on stage speaking about stuff. And Mike turns to me and he says, "Dave, why is it you get these guys like this up there speaking? Why shouldn't I be up there speaking instead?" And he's like, well, and I was like, well, Mike, first of all, you'd offend everybody and they'd all walk out. Well, yeah, but why? But why, why is it that these guys, and I think that's the thing with Trump that really appeals to people is we're tired of being lectured to. We're tired of professorial people coming up and wagging their finger at us and telling us that our concerns are not valid. And yes, absolutely, there's plenty of things I could we could go an entire episode. I could tell you all the things that bug me about Trump. But at the end of the day, it's like the dude just says what he believes, and that's kind of refreshing, even if it's stupid. I mean, I go back to one of the things he said. I remember during COVID, where they were Fauci and Collins or several of them up there, and somebody asked him a question about bleach, and he said, or no, sunlight, and Trump turns to one of the people and says, "Yeah, sunlight. That kind of makes sense. Let's investigate that." Well, you know, that's just what he thought in the moment. It's dumb, but it's what he thought in the moment. And there was no pretense around it. There was no, puffed up chest and all. I mean, he puffs up his chest periodically. He says, well, yeah, I'll solve the Ukraine war in the first 24 hours. So there's plenty of this hyperbole. But at the end of the day, what you get with Trump is you get somebody that, like at that McDonald's, he looked like he was having fun.
Yeah,
I
he looked like he
watched
was like legitimately having fun.
Right. He looked like he was having a good time. And yeah, the whole thing staged, whatever. But people, I think, are just tired of the you mentioned it, the condescending attitude of the people that think they're better than us. They're the experts. They should tell us how to live, and they should tell me
Yeah.
what's the fair share that I should pay. No, forget that. Let's all get together. Let's, we'll do Brody's in the parking lot and go have a beer. And that's the kind of thing, Harris would never do something like that. So I think people, and this is why I, I would be, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Trump does much better than people think he's going to do, because I think there's a lot of people, especially after COVID and especially after the, challenges that we've had in the economy, where we were told that inflation's transitory and our concerns. No, it's all doing really well. Especially after we're told all this stuff, people are, I think, just tired of that kind of folks telling us how to live our lives.
Before we wrap up today, we're going to cut it a little bit short today.
Yeah.
We're a week and a couple days as this episode will be released from the election.
Right.
So it feels like people are in only a few camps. They're diehard, I'm voting Democrat no matter what. Diehard Trump, ride or die.
Right.
You've got a few people in the middle who hate both of them, which is, and I think ordinarily the people in the middle is a much larger swath
It
historically
is. Yeah.
speaking.
Yeah.
So this time it's a much narrower band who are kind of like everybody sucks. It feels like
Right.
it's more, usually it's like 80% in the middle of everybody sucks, 10% either side are like they're my ride or die. Now it feels the opposite. 20% or maybe 10% are in the middle of like I hate everybody. What's your perspective on that?
Well, I think that's true. I mean, I think both of them are known figures. Both of them are they've been around for a while, and so I don't think there's anybody that really is unconvinced about either one. I think I think that what it comes down to, I think the undecideds are not undecided because they don't know the candidates or they don't know what they would do. We've got 4 years of Biden Harris. We know what she would do. We got 4 years of Trump before. We know what he would do. I think what they're unsure about, I think whatever the undecided is, whatever small percentage of that is, well, can I really vote for this person who says all these things? But yeah, I think I'd be better off under scenario A than I would under scenario B. I think that's pretty much I think that's what it really comes down to with anybody who's undecided. Can I vote for, we can talk about this another time, but can I vote for the lesser of two evils, which I think is a stupid
Yeah.
way to think about things.
Lesser of two evils is something I've heard my entire life up
Yeah.
until 2020. I heard it in 2016 a lot.
Yeah.
I did not hear it starting in 2020, and I'm certainly not hearing it this election cycle.
Right. And that's, I think it's because we whoever people vote for, I don't think there's very many Democrats that are excited about voting for Harris. I really don't. I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
people that will vote for her because she's not Trump. I think there's a lot of people who vote for her because they always vote Democrat. But I don't know that there's a
Yeah.
whole bunch of people that are inspired by the stuff that she said. And on the
And,
flip,
and something real quick, something you said there, I think is key. Before, again, going back to 2016 and earlier, people would say
yeah,
out loud, "I'm voting for John Smith because he's the lesser of two evils."
right,
Now, what they're saying is, "I'm voting for this person because it's not him or
not
it's
yeah.
not her."
Right. And that's really, I mean, that is really a dangerous situation because what they're saying is I'm voting for this person, even though I don't like him very much, or I don't think they're brilliant because the other person is evil.
Evil,
And
yeah.
again, it's one thing when you come up with this little hodgepodge of lesser of two evils discussion. It's another thing when you say uh, the other side is evil, and therefore, because that's what leads to violence and revolution and all sorts of negative outcomes that none of us really want. But people, if a significant number of people, even if a small but significant number of people, believe what they're told that the other person is evil, that they're Hitler incarnate, then that puts everything morally on the table for them, and so
Yeah.
that's very dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so in my lifetime I've never seen anything like this before, and the the condescension that we talked about earlier
Yeah,
coming from one party is overwhelming. And again, the on Twitter or X now, the volume of people who are minorities, especially black men,
right,
that are just saying this is all nonsense.
right,
They've kind of broken out of that. I guess you would call it fear or shame. Fear of being shamed for breaking away
yeah,
from what the historical norms are or whatever. Like the volume of those kinds of
yeah,
videos you see just from everyday people, like you know tank tops and baseball caps,
yeah, yeah,
guys just saying this is absolute nonsense. People who historically have never cared about politics, in my own small circle of people,
right,
um who've never cared about politics are absolutely engaged at a level that's unprecedented. And Neil Howe talks about this in the fourth turning, where at certain times, like he mentioned in the 19 teens, where voter turnout was like very low and
yeah,
people were very passive about it and things like that. And then boom, 20 years later, they're they're heavily engaged and things like that. We kind of saw the lull through, I would say, after Reagan, probably George H.W. Bush, and then up
Clinton, yeah,
until 2020, probably that whole era in between there, even including 2016. I think voter turnout was really low. But now, I mean, it's I don't know, it's got to be something like 73% of the traffic on Twitter is about politics now, which is I mean, it's just unparalleled in
well,
history, or in
and
our my lifetime anyway.
And I think part of what's happening now and part of what happens in these scenarios, which I think again will be instructive for Kenny G, is the sort of the groupings of how people vote, how they affiliate. So a lot of the groupings that we're finding now, for instance, there's as you mentioned, there's a significant number of black men that are they're like, no, I'm going to vote for Trump. Now,
Yeah.
but the dividing and same thing with Hispanic men too. But the dividing line there is more male female than it is
Right.
racial. And so in the
Yeah.
past, yes, there's been gender lines, and that's always been a thing. But it's when you take a look at the groups, the African Americans, you take a look at the Hispanics, you find a divergence, which the current political systems have not been. I mean, I don't think the polling is really worth a whole heck of a lot, honestly, because of
Yeah.
that. They're not oriented to measure this. It's a different kind of, they've got tape measures in feet and inches, and and we're working with a metric system here, so it's a different
Yeah.
kind of
I
scenario.
think that there's also, I'll give you an example here, but there's a few other areas this kind of creeps into, where one party, the progressive side, is very much the populace, should trust the information we deem to be trustworthy,
Right.
and the conservative side is much more like, yeah, but you guys have been full of shit a lot too, so maybe we should consider other things, right? Is
Right.
that a fair way to explain it to Kenny G?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely. Yes.
so there's this, and again, this is online. I have no idea how valid this is, but even if the numbers are off, this is a good example because they're not off by 100%.
Right.
But areas like this, the information, especially having gone through COVID and how much misinformation, I hate that word, but
Right.
misinformation there was from the government about efficacy and stopping transmission, and like, the 6-foot rule, it was like
Right.
hard science. We find out later on somebody like made it up one day in a think tank or something like that. Yeah, well, 6 feet sounds good. you know so here according to this thing, again, I don't know how valid it is, but I know that if these aren't the exact numbers, the numbers aren't dramatically different than what I'm going to read here,
Yeah.
but it's just the increase in different kinds of diseases and illnesses and um conditions, right?
Right.
So this says 30% increase since 1990. ADHD up 819%, Alzheimer's up 299%, autism up 2094%, bipolar disease in youth up 10,833%,
Yeah.
celiac disease up 1,111%, chronic fatigue syndrome up 11,027%, depression up 280%,
Yeah.
diabetes up 305%, fibromyalgia up 7,272%, hypothyroidism up 702%, lupus up 787%, osteoarthritis up 449%, sleep apnea up 430%. Like, these kinds of things, this kind of information that people have known to be true if they were around people who experience this kind of thing,
Yeah.
but couldn't really put their finger on it, are being told to ignore this kind of information because it's not deemed to be correct information. And
Yes.
I think bits like this, like the crime stats, you hear about,
Right.
how crime is this or crime is that, and then you find out, yeah, actually, well, that was all BS. That's not
Right.
really what it was. That was just a narrative, and one side seems to be strictly adhering to the narrative, and the other side's like, well, how about if we just actually like research on this, like figure out what reality really is?
Right.
It's like the
Instead
difference
of
between the science and doing science.
Well, that's exactly what it is. It's trust the experts, or I mean, in some circles, you are frowned upon when you said, "Well, I did some research." What do you mean you did some research? Are you a scientist? Are you capable of doing
Yeah.
research? You should just crawl back under your rock and eat the
How
food
could
we
you know
throw
what a
to you.
woman is? Are you a biologist?
Yeah, that's
How many
right.
times did you hear that 2 years ago?
Well, and this goes back to the previous discussion about Trump. Why are people, why are people gravitating towards Trump? Because he's sticking a finger in the eye of the people that have supposedly been there to help us, but all of these, and guide us, but then all of these negative effects have come on their watch. And it's almost like, well, I'm willing to try a salesman, who says a whole bunch of outlandish things, because how can he do any worse than you guys did? you know,
Right.
so I
Yeah.
think that's a big
And
appeal
you
to
have
it,
a track record of being deceitful or inaccurate, but
right?
not having the ability to acknowledge either one of those two things.
Well, yeah. See, I think that's the other thing is when people look at these politicians, and it's like, well, can you admit that you were wrong? Well, we learned, but since then we learned that the 6 foot,
Yeah.
people want people that are just going to be straight up, and we're willing to take a goofball, even if that's what it takes to get somebody who's going to be straight up and put up with the rest of it.
Right. All right. Well, good discussion, Dave. As you mentioned in the opening, if you are listening in our modern time here, around the year 2024, and you think there's something we completely got wrong, we'd love to get your input on that. Or you think there's something we got right, we'd love to hear that as well. You can go to unsilentpodcast.com and leave some comments on our different social channels. Rumble has a great comment section. It's a great place to do it. Until next time, this is Dave and Brian signing off.
See you next week.
Do you want to be unsilent? Make your voice heard on our social media channels and share where you think we got it right or wrong. Go to unsilentpodcast.com for social links so you can join the discussion.